Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again. As always, if it's your first time here, then it is good to see you and I hope you'll stick around. Okay, well, welcome to one of our normal weekend discussions, one of our normal weekend videos. If you're new to the channel, I normally look to upload a gameplay video midweek, every week, and I'll normally upload a discussion about all things Airsoft every weekend. The gameplay videos, as some of you may know, I have been injured, so I've not been able to get out to my regular games. But hopefully I'll be able to get out to them again soon, and we'll get more regular gameplays up on midweek videos. But at the moment, we're sticking with studio videos. So, if you are enjoying my series of videos, as always, then please do subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss any of my uploads. And let's get into today's video, what we're going to have a look at. Well, you've probably noticed we've got a replica sat in front of us here. And I thought what we could do today was do an introduction to the Steyr AUG replica, or the Steyr AUG. Now, I'm a big fan of this replica, but it's what I would call a love-hate relationship. If any of you out there have one of these AUGs already, replicas, then you might know that you can have quite a few problems with them. The reason I'm doing this video is because I've noticed on social media and in a lot of the communities that some more unusual replicas are becoming popular in the community, such as the P90. There's been a number of P90s come out recently. The P90 seems to have got popular. I'm in the process of building a P90 build myself. You can see some pictures of that on Facebook and Instagram, where you can also find Rock Bottom Airsoft, so check us out on there. And other more unusual ones, like the M14 seems to be making a comeback, and the Sorcum 16. Now, for me, I don't know about yourself, but a lot of the fields on my home site, Tazball Airsoft, you don't really see the Steyr in use. I think I've only ever seen me using this in game, and I've used this in game many times, which to me puts it in the unusual replica category. Not your usual AR pattern replica or AK pattern replica indeed. It's a little bit different. It's not a sniper, it's an assault replica, but it's again a little bit different. It's a bullpup design. So I thought we'd have a quick introduction to this as something different. If you were considering getting something different than an AR pattern or AK pattern replica, and you want to stand out on the field with something a little more unusual. Now, many of you may have seen the Steyr AUG many times before. It's used in movies and TV shows and computer games and things like that. I'm pretty sure it's been in Call of Duties and Rainbow Sixes, and it's definitely in CSGO. So there is a few platforms where you'll see the Steyr AUG. Now, what I think I'll do first is give you some details about these if you want to get one. You can get them by pretty much loads of brands. Snowwolf make nice ones, Classic Army make one, JG make a very affordable, very nice replica. ASG, which is what this one is, Action Sport Games, they make a Steyr AUG replica. Tokyo Marui, they make Steyr replicas. And they vary in price. Now, this particular Steyr that you've got in front of you here is from ASG. Now, me being on the more affordable slant of Airsoft, as I always mention for Rock Bottom Airsoft, I bought this as an ASG Sportline version. It comes as a kit. You get a cheap charger, a cheap battery, and you get the replica itself and a high cap magazine. Now, you can get all of that for about £110 British pounds, and that'll get you started with one. Now, what I will say is I would maybe not necessarily recommend the Sportline model. It is completely plastic. The outer barrel is plastic, the upper is plastic. Everything on it apart from this rail here is plastic. Now, this particular one of mine, I bought it with the intention to never leave it standard and to upgrade it. So this no longer is all plastic. The parts on this replica that should be plastic on the real steel are, such as the stock basically, and the front grip here. The outer barrel, upper, and everything else there is metal, as it should be. But I've had to change that. Now that's not to say that if you get a more affordable replica and you want it to be metal, you could either go with the JG, which is the one I would recommend. They do one with a full metal upper and full metal outer barrel, and then obviously plastic where it should be plastic, such as the stock. And again, they're very good for the money that you pay, but you'd be looking at a little bit more money, maybe looking around about the £150 to £200 mark. And if you go in for one that's maybe what you'd say would maybe be a little bit higher end, you could maybe go with the Tokyo Marui, or the Snowwolf ones are very nice. And again, you can get anywhere up to £300 to £400. Action Sport Games, to their credit, they do a Pro Line one, which has got metal in all the places it should be, and some other little bits that are nice, but it's much more expensive than the Sport Line one. So that's the replica that we've got sat in front of us here. Those are the ones that are available to you. Now, as replicas go, the Steyr AUG is compact. It's a bullpup design. What do we mean by bullpup design? Well, basically, with a bullpup in the real steel world, it means that the action is behind the trigger group. So that enables you to have a relatively small package rifle with a much longer barrel, because obviously instead of your barrel running from here forward, the barrel runs on this replica from here all the way forward, because it starts behind the trigger group. In Airsoft, it's the same principle. Your gearbox is mounted in the rear here in the buttstock, and your hop up is around about here and runs all the way to the front of the barrel there, the outer barrel. So you get a much longer barrel, but you're still getting a replica that is shorter than your average AR based replica, and it feels great in your hands. It really is compact. It's good to point. I can't get over enough of how good the replica feels in your hands. So for the money, you're getting something very different. Magazines are pretty easy to get hold of, and they're pretty cheap. You can get mid caps, low caps, high caps. They're great. I'm not sure about drum mags for them. I think somebody did do a conversion to create an LMG variant of this, which there was in the real steel world. I'm not totally sure on whether there's a replica you can buy out the box. As standard, you will not get this rail on one of these. This rail I added custom so that I could mount a torch on there. But you do have the rail at the top here. Now, what you will find is there are different variants of the Steyr AUG replicas, just the same as there are in the real steel world. They do a much shorter barrel version. They do versions that have a quad rail on them, so you can mount all sorts of accessories. They do the A1, which is the older version, which has a built-in optic. You maybe recognise that replica from movies such as Die Hard. That's used in that film. And then obviously there's everything in between. You get all sorts of variants of it. Have a look online, see what you can see. I'll put a link in the description to where you can get this particular version of the replica from. Just remember that if you buy one of these as standard, if you're happy with it being all plastic, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with all plastic guns, but I just wanted this to have the metal parts where it did have them, specifically the metal barrel. As many of you will know, the Steyr AUG is very modular, and it's the same in Airsoft as it is in the real steel world. Basically, if you flick this switch here and twist the barrel, you can remove the barrel group quite easily, and the whole thing slides out, and you can get to your hop chamber, your inner barrel, very easily. You basically just press that switch, slide the whole barrel out. Same for the upper receiver, that slides out as well. So everything's very easy to get at. Removing the gearbox from one of these is very simple task. And there's plenty of battery space. Your battery space is located under the cover in here. Plenty of room for a battery in there. So, you know, everything sounds good on it. You've got good magazine availability. It's good to hold. It feels good in your hands. It's nice and pointable. It's got a really long barrel. It's a version-free gearbox in these, so parts are plentiful for a version-free gearbox if you're going to do any upgrades on it. In this particular sport line, that's why I got it. It's got a standard full metal version-free gearbox. Any of the other ones that you look at that are pricier, I would imagine will also have the full metal version-free gearbox in there. One of the things about the Steyr AUG that's unusual is rather than a selector switch, this particular rifle in real life and in Airsoft has what we call a two-stage firing system for it. It's a two-stage trigger, so a light press like that to the first stop, that is you on semi, so that's us firing semi. But if you squeeze all the way, you hear that second click. When it clicks that second time, that's full auto. So basically that's semi, but if you pull the trigger hard, then that's you on full auto. It's got a crossbar safety, so that's on safe, that's unsafe. So, you know, the controls are great on it. Everything about it is great. From an externals point of view, from the real steel, you can adjust your forward grip. If you want to adjust it, it can be folded all the way out. So a nice all-round rifle. You've got your sling points front and back, so you can mount a sling on there. The replica is quite heavy. I think that's basically the features of the Steyr. If you're going to get it as a replica, on the face of it, absolutely amazing. And it looks different and it feels good in your hands. I can't say enough how much I like this replica. I love to play field games with it. So I think what we'll do is, I think given that you know how much I like this replica, like the look of it, I think what we'll do is we'll go a quick tour around it and then you can have a nosy of it. And then I'm going to get into why I have a love-hate relationship with it. So we've had a good look around the rifle. Nice looking replica as well. You might notice with the A1s that this stock will be olive green. With this one it's black to notify a civilian market type of one. So love-hate relationship if you did consider getting one of these. Okay, well, I've had to do a lot of work to this to get it firing how I'd like. Out of the box it was very low feet per second, or FPS. So there wasn't a lot of muzzle energy on it, and the hop was pretty much completely ineffective. It couldn't even hop a 0.2 gram BB at all. The BBs just dropped. Now I did a number of bits of work on this to try and get it so it would fire. I ended up doing a lot of work. The fact that I've stripped this down, it doesn't come with a MOSFET. I think some of the more expensive models do. I have fitted a MOSFET to this. It's not the easiest wiring to wire in a MOSFET to a Steyr AUG. It's a little bit different than doing a standard replica, as it were, because of this two-stage trigger system. That brings me on to the actual work on the gearbox. The gearbox is standard version 3 and very easy to get out. So I mean, working on the gearbox upgrades is very easy. However, the biggest problems you have with one of these replicas is the trigger might not be to your taste, because all that's actually happening is when I pull that trigger, I'm pushing a push rod, because obviously the gearbox is in the rear here, so I'm pushing those rods which activate the trigger on the gearbox. That gives you a bit of a squidgy trigger feel. Now it doesn't bother me, to be honest. I find the trigger fine. I don't do light trigger builds or anything like that, so it doesn't really bother me, but it is a very clunky trigger, very chunky triggers, which might not be to everybody's taste. The next problem that you're going to have is, although magazines are plentiful, compatibility is not so much an issue. It's just that feeding issues are prevalent in the Steyr. I believe it's a problem with a lot of bullpup style replica AEGs. The reason being is that there's a number of factors specifically on the AUG that can cause a problem. If we slide back the mock bolt cover there, you can basically see that you've got the hop up in the rear. I've altered that hop chamber to an Airsoft Pro. That hop is pressed against the gearbox face, as with any replica, under tension. But obviously with this replica, the tension is held in place by a removable outer barrel that's meant to remove just like the real thing. And if you don't get enough pressure between the gearbox and that, then you're going to lose a lot of air. Your air seal is not going to be good, and it can also cause alignment issues. The gearbox is held in place with a plastic tray in the rear where the battery compartment is. That can flex, which allows the gearbox to move slightly, and you lose alignment there. So you can get a lot of alignment issues with these, and that can be straight from the factory. You can have misfeeds, which you very commonly will get misfeeds, especially with this one. I had a heck of a time with misfeeds, especially on full auto. You can also have issues with very poor performance if you haven't got your air seal smack on, and you can get jams. There's a number of things that can go wrong, all related to the hop group and to the way that the magazines are loaded. On this particular replica, you can see at the bottom there's a feed nipple. I've replaced mine with metal. That is normally the little silver bit that you can see in the bottom there. That is normally plastic on this one from standard. I believe on the JGs it's plastic as well. That's an aftermarket part which changed it to metal, because that will wear out putting magazines in and out. That's spring loaded, and when you put the magazine in, that presses up against the bottom of the hop. The hop chamber on these is just smooth. So again, if you haven't got those three items perfectly lined up, then your BBs either aren't going to feed, they're going to misfeed, or again, you're going to get problems with your BB being pushed into your bucket. So there's a lot of issues you can have with the Steyr for feeding. I've said I wouldn't build another one of these, although I really like them. So that's something to be aware of. Now, from your perspective, you might buy one straight from the factory and it shoots fine. And if it does, that's great. But be prepared that if you're going to do upgrades, you might have issues where you need to shim the gearbox forward, which is what I had to do on this one by placing shims behind the panel that holds it in place, and that'll push the gearbox forward. Or you may have to shim your inner barrel backward towards the gearbox as well, and you've got to marry up those shims. It takes a lot of time and trial and error to get it just right so that your hop chamber is aligned with the feed nozzle in there, which is also aligned with your magazine. So you've got three factors there that can all lead to misalignment and all lead to misfeeds. So it can cause problems. Now, with that in mind, if you're a tinkerer and you're happy to work on a replica, then these are amazing to look at. They look great. I've seen some awesome builds on Facebook and Instagram, online in general, and there is a lot of information available online with regards to the Steyr. Admittedly, a lot of it is negative about feed issues and having problems setting them up. But again, there are equally a number of stories of people getting these set up perfectly and running really well for them. Now, I won't lie to you, this isn't the best performing replica that I own, but it performs more than well enough for my play style in the field, and I've had great fun using this in the field. So if you're going to be looking at something a little bit different, then the Steyr is something I could certainly recommend to have a look at. Again, from a point of view of the P90, it functions very similarly to the P90 with the dual stage trigger and the fact that it's a bullpup method of feeding the BBs. So a bit bigger, longer barrel, but very similar in operation. I actually prefer working on the P90 myself. It's a little bit easier to get along with. But these, if you're going to keep it standard and you fancy one, then have a look at the JGs, have a look at the Classic Armies and the Tokyo Maruis, have a look at the ASG version as well, the Action Sport Games. If you're happy with it being all plastic, then the Action Sport Games Sport line will do you fine, because you do still get the full metal gearbox, so the gearbox is just the same, you just don't get any of the niceties. If you want something that's full metal and still want to keep relatively low budget, then you can go for the JG. That's a lovely looking replica, and again it'll have a full metal version 3 gearbox. If you want to go with something a bit higher end, then maybe take a look at the Tokyo Marui or the Snow Wolf. Classic Army externals are always very nice, and they're all options you can look at, and it'll give you something a little bit different, and that's why I love it. So my love part of it is I love the feel of it, the handling of it. I even like the 2-stage trigger system. It's brilliant, the simplicity of it. It's just an overall a nice looking, unusual replica. But the hate side of it, if you were considering getting one, is feeding issues. You know, you're going to get feeding issues if you start altering things. And if you're really unlucky and it comes from the factory not perfectly aligned, you're going to have feeding issues. You're going to have to start doing things to that. You've got a plastic base plate in here where your battery compartment is that holds the gearbox forward. That eventually is going to start to flex, so you're going to have to put some shims in there. One of the advantages of being able to get to the hop unit so easily is the fact that the outer barrel just twists and pulls out. It's so easy to get the outer barrel out and the inner barrel with it. And you can change your uppers very easily. But one of the problems with that modularity in Airsoft is it does lead to issues with feeding, whether it works loose on the fastening system at the front, and you might have to shim your inner barrel slightly back so you get a good air seal on your gearbox. But apart from those teething problems, it's an awesome replica. It's different, it works, the gearbox works well, it's version free, it's tried and tested, upgrades are plentiful for it. You've got a long barrel, so if you're wanting to be really different, you could have this as a basis of a DMR. If you could get a good feeding on it. I know that Snowwolf do one that looks already like a DMR. It's a sniper variant of the AUG, and that's very nice with a huge suppressor on the outer barrel. But again, you know, the choice is yours. It's such a modular rifle in real life, and you know, in real steel, and in Airsoft, it's just as modular. It's a great replica as a basis for a build, or as standard, if the one that you get is working really well for you. I mean, I may just have been unlucky with this one with feed issues. I've had plenty of other people online that have said their replica was okay from the get-go. So that's my introduction to a replica that I think is a little bit different, and a little bit different from AR and AK pattern replicas. And also, with P90s and M14s becoming popular at the moment, it's another thing that's different to those as well. So it gives you something to be a little bit unusual on the field, and have a go at something that you could maybe work on. If you're into working on them, it's definitely a basis for an unusual build. Would I recommend it? If you're a beginner, then no. As your first replica, I would say to stay away from a Steyr AUG. But to be fair, if I'm recommending a first replica, I would always recommend one of the more seen replicas, one of the more common replicas in the field, such as an AK or an AR pattern replica, because the parts are much more plentiful. There's loads of instructions online how to fix them and clean them and care for them, loads of magazines, loads of accessories. That's why I'd say that. So for a beginner, I'd maybe not recommend something like this. If you're dead set on getting one, then great, go for it. You'll certainly look different on the field, and it's certainly affordable. On the other hand, if you are a regular player, if you've got your hands dirty and how to do it working on your own replicas, if you're happy to have a tinker, then yeah, this is a great replica. You'll certainly have that look of exclusivity on the field. You'll look a little bit different than the average replica that you'll see. Okay. I hope you enjoyed my quick overview of the Steyr AUG replicas. I hope you found it useful and interesting. If you did enjoy the video, then please do drop a like on it. If you think that there are things I could improve, or if you have any questions in general about the Steyr or about Airsoft in general, then do please drop me a comment below. I'll always respond to a comment. I might not get back to you straight away, but I will always respond. And if you are enjoying my series of videos, then please do subscribe to the channel, and that way you won't miss any of my uploads, where we'll be looking at things like this regularly. But apart from that, thanks very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.